tax in our country and in our province. Mr. Speaker, I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about some of the great projects that are happening in Saskatoon and in Saskatchewan. Very recently, we had the announcement of the Shakespeare on the Saskatchewan project, the enhancement of that wonderful facility, something that's been an institution in our province, in the city of Saskatoon. Our government proudly contributed $1.4 million, and with ingenuity, the community was able to raise over $3 million in private donations. This is a proud moment when government, our provincial government, our city, and private sector partners can come together to build a brighter future for the city of Saskatoon and for the province. The funds will go towards construction of a new amphitheatre, base for the stage, audience seating, and park-style pavilions for dressing rooms, the box office, and concessions, making it a real jewel of our province even better as they have the infrastructure necessary to continue to grow and to continue to accommodate our growing population in the province. The organization will purchase a new tent structure to accommodate the larger amphitheatre, along with new energy-efficient lighting, sound equipment, and riser decking for the stage. Shakespeare on the Saskatchewan, Mr. Speaker, has played a vital role in Saskatoon's rich cultural history for more than 30 years. The new construction will be a great addition to the Meewasin Park during the summers in Saskatoon and allow for an enhancement of experience and extend the cultural research of the company. Mr. Speaker, as an MLA representing a Saskatoon constituency and also as a sports enthusiast, I was very proud of our government's announcement about the investment and advancement of Saskatoon's Gordie Howe Sports Complex. The government of Saskatchewan is contributing some $32 million towards this and 11 other infrastructure projects across our province. The expanded Gordie Howe Sports Complex will house a new multi-sport complex, an outdoor artificial turf field, state-of-the-art track and field facility that will be able to host national and international competitions, an outdoor and indoor baseball training facility and practice complex, Nordic ski trails, as well as new ticket booth facility and bleachers. Mr. Speaker, people from across the country, indeed across North America, are coming to the Gordie Howe Sports Complex to see how different levels of government were able to partner and to provide a facility that is indeed state-of-the-art. It will benefit our children for many generations to come, and thousands of individuals will be using that facility each and every year. The improved facility will contribute to better communities and a better quality of life for all people of Saskatchewan. Sports and physical activity, as we know, is very important for all people as it supports our mental and physical health, not only to mention team building, perseverance, and a positive work ethic. In a time when the world can feel more divided than ever, we hold on to moments that bring us together. And sports, Mr. Speaker, does just that. This past weekend, I had the pleasure of attending the Tim Hortons NHL Heritage Classic. The sporting event brought thousands of fans and tourists to pack the sold-out Mosaic Stadium to watch the Winnipeg Jets and the Calgary Flames go into overtime while the snow made for a picturesque event. Mr. Speaker, yes, the right team won. Of course, the Winnipeg Jets were successful. It was a little tense for a while there, but no, all kidding aside, both teams did very, very well and provided great entertainment for all of the residents from Saskatchewan that attended, but many attended from Alberta, from Manitoba, and really from around Western Canada and the northwestern United States. This event filled up every hotel room in Regina and area and brought $15 to $20 million to our local economy. It allowed us to show off our wonderful Mosaic Stadium to all of North America. And as Gary Bettman said, and he said it's one of the finest facilities that he has seen across North America. And Mr. Speaker, I'm willing to bet that he's seen a lot of those facilities, and we're very, very proud of his compliment towards our facility. Accolades have to go out to Mayor Fougere and the City of Regina for the work that they have done, and Tim Reed at Everest Place and his team, and the many volunteers who volunteered for the wonderful weekend as well. I know one individual talked to me and said, Yeah, he couldn't believe it. His job was to drive Don Cherry and Ron MacLean around for the weekend. So you can imagine the smile that he had on his face when that happened. So, Mr. Speaker, I want to again thank you for this opportunity to reply to the speech from the throne. It's getting near time for me to wrap up in my comments, but I want to say that there's one theme that I think rings through of this speech from the throne, and that's growth. Growth in our population, and with that, growth in the services to the people of Saskatchewan, and the growth in their quality of life in this province that they've had since this government has had the honour of sitting on this side of the legislature. We're very proud of our record over the last 12 years, and we are prepared very humbly to lead, if the people of Saskatchewan choose us into the future, to lead another decade of growth, and that's been outlined in the speech from the throne, and talking about we're not afraid to set targets. You know, when we set a target of growing the province by 100,000 people, we all know it's a story that's been told many, many times. Members of the opposition said it was statistically impossible for that to happen. Well, nothing could be farther from the truth, and as we set goals of our population of 1.4 million people and goals of 100,000 new jobs in Saskatchewan, that's what's outlined in this speech from the throne, and that's what the people of Saskatchewan have to look forward to. Our government will continue to ignore the doom and gloom that we started to see last night, and I'm sure we'll continue to see from the opposition. Whereas we'll be very positive as we look at the new schools that we have in Saskatchewan, the Jim Pattison Children's Hospital, the Shakespeare on the Saskatchewan, the Gordie Howe Sports Complex, Mosaic Stadium, and the bypass that we had the opportunity. Indeed, it was history in the making yesterday when members from both sides of the House had the opportunity to take in the announcement of the Regina bypass. So that's what we have in Saskatchewan. We have new hospitals, we have new schools, we have new sporting facilities, we have new transportation infrastructure in our province. All things that are necessary to ensure that we have another decade of growth in our province. That's what this speech of the throne has enabled us to do. So, Mr. Speaker, from a very humble member, I want to thank the people of Saskatoon-Willow Grove again for allowing me this opportunity to be part of this wonderful team. Women and men from all walks of life who have the honour of serving in this legislature are a part of a cohesive team, led by a fabulous premier, somebody who understands urban Saskatchewan, somebody who understands rural Saskatchewan, understands northern Saskatchewan, and has made his mark already on the province going forward. So again, Mr. Speaker, thank you to the residents of Saskatoon-Willow Grove for allowing me to take my place. Thank you for the opportunity to have my thoughts put forward, and I look forward to a very productive session and a positive and opportunistic session going forward. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Recognize the member for Cumberland.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To join in a response to the throne speech, before I start, again, I want to thank my CAs. Do a great job. When Devin, and I just want to say thank Devin for the good work he does. When people come into the office and they need help, when it's situations where they're very stressed and concerned about maybe dealings that they're doing with the ministry, and Devin goes beyond and helps that. We also have Willie Billette, Pearl. We're lucky. We've got people who are wanting to fill in, want to help people, and that's a good thing. So I want to thank them for all they do for the constituency that I represent, and I'm very proud to represent and honoured to represent the good people of the Cumberland constituency. Also, I want to mention my wife and my family. I've got 17 grandkids, so it keeps us hopping and busy, and it's an opportunity to do the job we do, to educate my grandchildren on the challenges, and I'll get into that a little more about the struggles people have, the struggles we have as Aboriginal people, the struggles that many of our community members struggle with, that unfortunately some of the powers to be don't understand, don't have a clue. But I'll get into that when I do my response. But with that, I want to just thank those individuals. Also, I want to thank the executive of the Cumberland constituency. These are great volunteers, people who very passionate, care about our province, are very dedicated, and there's many of them, whether the youth, from our members who have a lot of wisdom that are on our executive. I refer to them as the elders and the knowledge that they share with us, and that's so important to have that. So I want to thank them. But before I go on, everyone else, there's always issues, back home. And we've been through, in the North, we've been through our fair share of many issues. And I want to thank the leadership, whether it's the band, chief and council, our mayors, our Métis leaders, the good citizens, Board of Education members. There's many different groups and people in the community that recognize that leaders. I want to thank them for the great work and advocating all the time for the North, for the Cumberland constituency. I want to thank them for their, I know sometimes it's frustrating, but I'll get into some of the comments. And Mr. Speaker, where I see a government who introduces a throne speech, most people would say a throne speech. I've been here a short while. It's supposed to talk about the great things you're going to do over the next coming year, about the exciting things and things that you'll be doing for residents of this great province, not just for certain members in their constituency, but the whole province. Government's supposed to represent the whole province. And I can tell you from some of the comments I've heard back home, the frustration, people wanted to see more, and I'll get into some of the details. But when I think about people's hopes, and they truly do, they go to their government and they say, the families, and I think about the families, they do the good work, and many families have worked hard for this province over the years. They've done their part as employees, as residents of this province. They've done the good work. Times are getting harder, and they're willing to do. They roll up their sleeves, and that's what we know about Saskatchewan people. I know the people that I represent, that's what they do. They look out for their neighbors, and when times are tough, they gather around, they talk about what they can do, and they partner. In the North, I've watched so many communities, organizations, individuals, leaders, partnership, and they find ways, and they're very dedicated, and they want to do the right thing for the people that they represent, and they hope our province does well, and they want our economy to do well, because if our economy is doing well, we hope the residents in our province, whether they're in the North, the rural, or the urban centres, are doing well. And that's what people want, and they hope that the economy goes. And when they give governments a blessing and they say, we're going to give you a blessing and we're going to allow you to govern for 4 more years or for whatever time, governments, and I've said this before, and I've learned this, governments don't get elected in. Governments get elected out for not doing what the residents of this great province have asked them to do. And time again, when you don't hear the issues of our leaders, our community members, our Aboriginal people, our Northern people, whether they're Métis, First Nations, Inuit, when you don't hear their concerns and you don't show them the respect, you will pay a price. Maybe some of you will have to have questions on the doorstep that you'll have to answer. You'll have organizations asking you, as a government, how are you failing in so many areas? And yes, I know I've done this before. When you've done good as a government, I've given you credit. And at the end of the day, I'm sure you'll check Hansard because you love doing that. So go ahead and check. But at the end of the day, Mr. Speaker, here's a government introduced a throne speech, did nothing but talk about recycled things that they've done. They talked about all this and that, but not about the issues that are facing many Saskatchewan residents. And I'll get into those issues that are affecting the communities that I represent and the constituency. So they love, Mr. Speaker, they love to pat themselves on the back, tell them they're doing such a great job, but when it's families, when it's young people that are struggling, whether it's education, we see a government, as far as I'm concerned, you are not hearing what the people are saying. You are not seeing the challenges that people are facing. You could sit here and talk about, oh, how great you're going to go in the growth plan and all this thing. There are so many people suffering in this great province, and that is a shame to all of us in here. We owe our grandchildren, our children, the residents of this province, so much more. And a government that, again, like I said, likes to pat themselves on the back about the great things they're doing. But I'll get into some of that. And I think about the challenges, and I refer to some of the families. I think about affordability for many Saskatchewan residents. Northern Saskatchewan, urban, rural, I think they're all feeling it. Our power bills, the struggles. And when leadership up north in the constituents that I represent raise the concerns about utilities and bills being too high, and government may go in there, and government officials and their ministries may go in and meet with people and have discussions. And it's amazing. You think you would come up with solutions and work together because people are asking you, leadership's asking you, but what we get is the blame. Who's at fault? And I find that the government likes to blame. It's everyone else's. Oh, it's the NDP. The NDP. Newsflash, 11 years, going on 12. You have been the government. You've had the policies, the decisions, legislation to make our province better. You've had, well, that's good. You just keep patting yourself on the back. We'll get to that. And there may be areas where, the province is doing good. But we've heard about the challenges, whether it's the construction industry with the PST. You put $1 billion more, say no new taxes, yet you expect families who are struggling. We have some of the worst poverty levels. You have some children so many of them going to bed hungry, not sure, families struggling. But I'll get into that because, I also talk about a government, and I know today, question period, we had an opportunity to ask the Minister of Social Services about the way he's going to carry on paying and supporting those individuals that have to go. They don't want to go on social services, but they're on social services, and they apply and they get the services that the ministry and the government is supposed to provide for them when they need it. But when you change things on individuals, and maybe some individuals can handle their own budgets, that's fine. But when you change policies and you're the minister and you're the ministry, at the end of the day, the government decides this is how we're going to do it. Remember this. When people get evicted from their home because maybe they didn't pay their rent, something's happened, they weren't ready for that, but you're saying, no, this is the way you're going to do it. Now, if this is the way we're going to do it, but to the government, I'm going to say this, and to the Minister of Social Services, you've made your decision, you're going to go ahead with it. Even those that are saying this is not going to help, it's not going to work for everybody. It is not going to work. But if, for some reason, I hope people in this great province will hold the minister and the government accountable. Because if people lose their home and they get evicted because of the programs and the policies they implemented, and somebody ends up being homeless and end up losing a life in this province because somebody freezes to death, winter's coming, then I hope they hold him accountable and the government accountable, because they need to. Now, there are many people struggling in this province. Many people. I think about the suicide in this province, and I've heard members on that side talk about, and that's right. If we have policies and we spend dollars in budgets and it saves one life, then I agree with those members. That was well worth it because you saved one life, and that is worth it. I want to tell you this from people back home who have lost their children, their loved ones to suicide. And to have a government who I was hoping in this policy, in your throne speech, would be a commitment to say, let's work together, First Nations, Métis, school divisions, everyone, health region, come together with the opposition, with government, and say, to losing one more Aboriginal child, one more child in this province to suicide is, I don't know, my emotion is so hard. It's tough to support those families who lose their loved ones, a government that won't even support. I don't understand it. I went home, I've left here in this chamber, and I've said, I don't understand it. Are we that different that our grandchildren, our children, can't have some type of a suicide prevention strategy to work so that we don't lose anyone to suicide? At least we can say we tried as a province. I'm honestly, I'm appalled that you would not support this. I'm hoping, and there is hope. There's petitions, hundreds of petitions, people talking, letters of support. They're coming. People are seeing that something has to go. We have a crisis when it comes to suicide, mental health addictions. I was hoping to see more. Yes, you put a little more dollars in every time that is. I hope it helps, and I hope it saves somebody. But when you...
Really?
Well, that's really nice.
More than enough.
There you go. So when we lose more children and more people to suicide, that's what you want to say?
New dollars and
Unbelievable. But anyway, it goes to show you,
new initiatives.
Mr. Speaker, it goes to show you what we're dealing with as a province. When even in this chamber, we can't work together. We can't work together on such a serious issue, a crisis going on. But enough said about that, because I know there's going to be more support, more leaders, more people, whether it's the Métis Nation, I hope FSIN, the tribal councils, chief and council, mayor and council, school division. I hope everyone sends in letters to this government saying it's a shame after what they've heard today from members on opposite that you could even say get into this. But anyway, having said that, Mr. Speaker, I'm going on to other situations, but I want to say to the families, to the mothers and the fathers, the Muslims, the Cookums, the grandparents, families who have lost loved ones, on this side of the House, you have our support, our understanding, you have our hearts. They're tore for the suffering you're going through. And someday, on this side of the House, we will be government. And I promise you, as long as I'm here, I will do everything I can to fight to have a suicide prevention strategy for this province, for people with addictions, with mental health. It is a crisis that it's going to do. And I hope someday the good people of this province will say, time for a change. This government's old, tired, and out of ideas. I've heard that from my colleagues. It's unfortunate that you would not work with members on this side. We've done that on other pieces of legislation where we've said, we've had other individuals, go ahead, it's okay. You have a right to say what you want. When people are struggling, you don't have the compassion to understand that. That's okay, I understand that. I guess that's maybe where we different as a party.
This, don't worry.
You know, maybe we different as a party, but as individuals, I hope someday we can come together and maybe fix some of the issues that need to be addressed. But I'm going to go on, Mr. Speaker. I'm not going to pay attention to the heckling that's coming from those members. You know, I look at the economy, and I think about northern Saskatchewan, and there's opportunity if we had maybe the industry, and I think about the uranium industry, the mining sector, for all those workers who lost their jobs. You know, I've had family members who lost their jobs, lots of northern people from the south who worked in the mining up north, did a great job, it provided for their families. A lot of jobs went away. We were hoping that, you know, government would respond, and I hear that sometimes governments will respond with grants and programs, and they'll help those workers try to find new training, different ways to work with the leadership, work with communities. And those employees that are impacted with the loss of jobs, they find different ways to find training and support. I hope, you know, I was hoping the rapid response team that was going to come to northern Saskatchewan, that's what we heard. Oh, we're launched the rapid response team. They just haven't got there yet. We're waiting for them. And maybe the government, and I was hoping in the throne speech there'd be more talk about that, how we could work with the employees who have lost their jobs for training and, you know, finding ways to work with the communities that are impacted. But, you know, Mr. Speaker, the list goes on of issues that are faced in the north. I look at our doctor shortage. You know, we have that. Many people will say they feel like that's a struggle. It's important when your loved ones are sick. You get to go to, talk about ER wait times, and the list goes on. It's not me saying this. It's individuals telling us this who are coming and struggling. It's not the members here who, as some of them will say, we're always whining and doom and gloom. These are Saskatchewan residents, the people that elected you, that elected all of us, who said, come together. And here's the issues the families are facing. And to have members say, oh, doom and gloom, and say, these are serious issues that are facing families today. And a government that makes comments like that, members that don't understand it, it's appalling. You'll be ashamed of yourselves. But having said that, Mr. Speaker, like I said, there's enough issues that are facing. I think about some of the challenges in northern Saskatchewan when I think about long-term care. I'm going to talk about that. I know Creighton, the leadership in Creighton is working hard, and the residents want a long-term care facility. They need that for the east side of the province. Whether it's communities like Sandy Bay, Pelican Arrows, Deschambault, they're all over there. Creighton, Denair Beach, La Ronge, they're asking for long-term care, and they're going to put their petitions in. The leadership have asked, and they're waiting. They're working hard. They need long-term care. They want long-term care, so their loved ones can stay in their communities. And as close as they can have to their communities, they would like their loved ones to be there when they have dementia, when they're getting old and they need the care. They've done their hard work in the north. They've worked hard. They would like to stay with their families, the culture, the language. It's important. I've heard many of our community members saying that, leadership, saying we need to do that. So let's just hope. I think about cell service, internet, high speed. We've got residents in some of our communities, our biggest community, La Ronge. We've got an online petition going around. I give credit to those individuals who are saying, enough's enough. SaskTel does a great work. We know that. SaskTel is a Crown corporation owned by all of us, and we want to keep our Crowns. And I know that people want the high-speed internet. They want to make sure so that we're not having issues when it comes to technology for our schools, for our kids' education. We know through technology. So they would like that. They're going to do that. They're asking. So, there's another thing that I wish would have been in here for the North. Cell service, and I think about some of the communities that don't have cell service, and I think about some of the challenges in safety. I think about Creighton area and Flin Flon, that whole area. When you go on the Hanson Lake Highway back to PA, there is no cell service for hundreds of kilometers in an emergency. If something should ever happen, there's no. And I thought about this. SaskTel could come up with a plan to do a certain thing, and maybe towers every so often in emergency so people could have cell service in an emergency. There's different things we could do with the profits. Instead of using those profits for, those special deals or for special programs, special projects that the government thinks they want to support with our profits from our Crown Corporation. So they could do that. That's one area. I think about the airport in Pelican Arrows. In light of the situation that's gone on in Flin Flon Hospital, where mothers cannot go there now when they go into labour to have birthing and to have the birth of their babies. So then they're going to have to drive. And if an emergency should ever happen and they have to go by air ambulance, well, Pelican doesn't have lights. It's not paved. So they're asking and they're petitioning and they're asking for that to be done. So there are things. And I'll be honest, I've taken upon myself. I know that the new Minister of Highways, I wanted to congratulate him on his role. I've sent him a letter delivered to his office explaining some of the challenges the North feels and some of the challenges that we're going through, and hoping so that for his file, he'll know some of the challenges that our northern leaders and our communities are facing. So I wanted him to know with the highways, airports, and stuff like that. So I wanted to share that. The other thing, I guess, the last thing, and I know my time's just about up, unless somebody says I have more time, but, okay, thank you. We look at the hope, and I think about the hope of community members, and I think way up north, and I think about Wollaston Lake, Hatchet Lake First Nation, and I think about their commitment that they were given by this government in 2008 for an all-season road to Wollaston, for the community, for the residents. And it is about safety, and they've said that. And we've seen the federal government say, well, we're ready, now we're ready, and then we see the province say, well, we'll have to look at it, and then we see that change, and then it's back and forth. For years, it's been going back and forth. The leadership and the community members of Wollaston deserve the road, once and for all, about safety. They've lost loved ones. They've lost teachers who are from out of the community who come there to teach on the ice road. It's unsafe. They're of asking, and they need that, and I think it's the right thing to do. When you make a promise and a commitment as a government, you should honour that and fulfill that. And you've had record revenue for years, and you did nothing. And that's sad, sad. But having said that, I guess I wanted to. Now, you know, the other thing I want to talk about, housing for seniors. People who can't afford to pay the utility bills because they're so high up in the north. Utility bills, and they get evicted. They can't afford to pay their rents because of the cost of food. Some of them are isolated communities. They struggle so much. They're very proud people. They are. They try to do their part. Our trappers, look what you've done to our trappers. No funding. You don't support them. And that's how they feel, and that's what I hear from trappers. You talk about the forestry. You talk about the challenges. Residents are saying, trappers, many groups are starting to ask some tough questions. And again, government will have to answer. And we'll wait for the response that whether there's letters, whether there's petitions, awareness. We'll see what the government's response is to those individuals who are raising those concerns as we did. I think about the businesses and the outfitters in the north who have seen the lease fees go up, who are shutting down because they cannot afford the lease fees. And some of them have said it's almost like 400 or 500% increase in their lease fees. And then you get response, well, we didn't increase those for 10 years, so all of a sudden we spent all the money, we're broke, and we're trying to find money. There's groups that are very upset with the way the government's handled that. And I know the government is hearing it. They better be hearing it, because I'm being told that they're letting minister know, and they're letting the officials know about their concerns. So that's one area, I'll say that. Whether it's outfitting, whether it's leaseholders who are getting those bills and seeing the increases, they're very upset, and they want to, and they should. The last area, you know, I think, I'm just about done here, but the last area, you talk about schools and infrastructure getting old in the north, and I do know the school divisions do their part as a priority list, and they try to do their part on behalf of the communities and the school divisions that represent the north and the Cumberland constituent. They try their best, like other school divisions, to prioritize which schools need to new schools, which ones are overcrowded, and all this stuff. And we see some of those challenges. But again, we'll let those individuals do the good work that they do, the school divisions, to bring that forward to government. But we see issues facing our children with overcrowded and the challenges. The last, I guess the last thing I'll say is the government has an opportunity. The people have entrusted you, and they'll hope in the next year, in the next budget, you will deliver. You talked about, some of your members talked about harvesting and taking resources out of the north. And that's good. We want to be part. Our northern people want to be a part of the economy. We want to share. Our trappers want to share. Our leaders, everyone wants to share. We think we need to. But when your government forgets about northern people, about the Aboriginal people, just remember this. Actions speak louder than words. So I'll leave that with you, Mr. Speaker. The last thing I'm going to say is I will not, and the reason I will not be supporting the throne speech, the reason I'm supporting the amendment is because of the issues that are facing many northern Saskatchewan residents and the people that come into my office and share with me the frustration and the unhappiness about the way they're getting treated by this government. So with that said, I would like to thank Mr. Speaker for allowing me to share a little bit about the challenges constituents back home are facing and the good people of our province. If I've missed areas, I know that my colleagues will have opportunities to talk about many of the challenges facing Saskatchewan residents in these tough times. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
You're here.
Recognize the member for Last Mountain Touchwood.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Certainly pleased to be able to enter into this reply to the throne speech. It's actually, I think it's been 2 or 3 years since I've had the opportunity to enter into the debate. I'm not sure exactly over the 19 plus years, 20 years, I guess, since I've been elected to this assembly, how many throne speech debates I entered into. I certainly remember the first one for sure, and I'm sure most members will remember their first throne speech reply. I remember I was scheduled to speak on a Monday, so that weekend I'm in my constituency office writing and rewriting my speech, practicing it, and then going back to the drawing boards and so on. And as it turned out, I thought I was going to have an opportunity to stand on my feet in the afternoon, but as it turned out, I was the first person up right after our break, because as back then we did also sit in the evenings and so on. And so I come back in here, my papers were wiggling quite a bit, and I felt quite nervous, and I start into my speech, and the Premier of the day, Premier Romano, not realizing that I was doing my maiden speech, began to heckle me, which certainly didn't help my confidence, because Premier Romano was a pretty fierce debater, and when you're a rookie in here, you didn't really want to take him on. And but anyway, we got that all sorted out, and I managed to get through it, and and I think it went reasonably well. I mean, and I certainly knew that I could have probably done a whole lot better, but I got through it, and that was the main thing. So I'm going to try and get through it here this afternoon, Mr. Speaker. This will be the my last opportunity to speak in a reply to a throne speech, and I'm going to take a little bit of time. And if the clock goes past my allotted time, so be it, because once a member's on his feet, Mr. Speaker, when you sit in that chair, you can sometimes take an opportunity to read some of the rules. And as long as the member's on his feet and speaking to the business before the House, the member can carry on, and I may have to go a little bit beyond my time. I'm not sure. I got several pages of notes, and I got a few things that I want to say, and this kind of it reminds me of the Seinfeld episode of the holiday that and what the name is, Festivus for the rest of us, and I have some complaints with some of you folks here, and I may have to voice them, so pay attention. But anyway, I'll start with the traditional things that most members do, and that's the thank yous. And I too have a number of people that I'd like to thank for the past number of years that I've been given the great privilege of serving. And and one thing I really don't need is heckling from members on my side of the House. We'll leave that till a little later, and if we want to get into it, I might be ready for it. So just saying. Anyway, first of all, I'd like to thank my good wife, Marlene, who has put up with me for many years. We've actually developed a relationship that seems to work for us when the House is sitting, and that's called living together apart, because, of course, when the House is sitting, I come into Regina on Monday morning. I have the advantage of being fairly close to Regina, so I can come in Monday morning, and I don't get back home till at the earliest sometime Thursday afternoon or evening. Maybe I should stop that too, shouldn't I? And I'd like to thank our two granddaughters, Tanisha and Alex, who have been living with us, and for the last 9 years. They certainly have been supportive most of the time. They certainly have presented some challenges over the years, but we're getting through it. The oldest, Tanisha, is 23. She's got 3 years of university at FNU. She's decided to take a year off to refocus, and the youngest granddaughter, Alex, is finishing grade 12. But they certainly have been there to support me and to support Marlene. Someone else that I would certainly